Okay. So, Dr. Fred Blum is a career coach, speaker, and trainer. His background is so unique. His background includes a variety of training and experiences that led him to his current position. With degrees in psychology and chiropractic. Could you give me an adjustment when we're done? Okay. He's also studied human transformation and some of the most brilliant minds, with some of the most brilliant minds in the world. In addition to his mainstream training, he's been training in martial arts for over 40 years. He continues to raise an amazing son and lived in a spiritual community. Very, very broad and different, right? So he brings a lot of life experience to us. And he also performed in an off-Broadway comedy troupe. Wow. So very varied. So Dr. Blum's topic today is step out of problem solving and become a creator, something I'm very interested in hearing. So please welcome Fred.
Hello.
And Fred, please take the hour.
Sure.
Okay? Yeah, absolutely. Pass these out.
Please. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today. Let me just pull this up real quick.
You're welcome.
So, please pardon me. I'm going to refer a little bit to notes as I speak because I created this presentation for you guys today, and so I don't have it all memorized just yet. My intention here today is for you guys to really begin to clearly experience the difference between what I call problem solving, or what we call a problem solving structure, and a creative structure, and hopefully by the time we're done, to be able to begin to apply some of these ideas on your own. I thought I would start by giving you a little bit about my story and how kind of I came to this understanding. I spent most of my life learning, exploring, obsessing really about the human condition, about what it takes to create a happy, fulfilling, successful life. And you know, what is it that makes us happy, really? And what is happiness really about? And so I really went after it. You know, as we said a moment ago, I studied martial arts from about the age of 14. I got a black belt when I was 19, and along the way I got degrees in chiropractic and psychology and studied all this stuff. You already heard all that stuff, so I don't have to repeat it again. And, you know, I read hundreds of books, attended hundreds or maybe more hours in seminars and trainings and things like that, built successful practices, got married, had a beautiful son, and so I'm sure on the outside it looked like I was doing pretty well. So why was it that I was waking up most mornings wondering what the heck was wrong with me? You know, why was it that after all those years I still felt somehow that I had to be in competition with my twin brother? Why was it that after all this time and energy and everything I put into my life, that somehow I was still feeling not quite enough? And it turns out that I was looking in the wrong direction. See, all that time, all that energy, all that money went into feeding a part of me that could never truly be satisfied. That could never, in fact, truly be happy. And I'm willing to bet that, that some of you in this room are experiencing the exact same thing, that probably know just what I'm talking about. And how do I know that? Because I think we've all been taught the exact same lie. Right? Because we all know the drill. The drill is that you work hard every day, and when you're not working hard, you're learning, you're going to seminars, you're doing something like this to essentially try and figure out what you have to do so that you can get what you want, so that you can finally be happy. Make sense?
Yes.
Well, I've got bad news and good news for you. The bad news is that plan doesn't work. Sure, it may appear to work for a while, but there comes a point with everyone, no matter how successful or even unsuccessful they are, when they realize that that isn't going to do it, that there's something beyond seeking happiness in the external world that they need to look for. The good news is that there is another way. What I've discovered is that you can create happiness and success from, let me say that differently, you can create success from a place of happiness rather than trying to find it in your outcomes and the accomplishments that you create in the world. So the assumption here, and this is really critical to this idea of problem solving versus creation, is that peace, happiness, well-being, etc. are something that we only get when we have achieved X. In essence, what we're saying is life will be better when. So think about that for a second in your own lives. What is X for you? And you guys all may have some different ideas. I mean, this is Launchpad Job Club, so I suspect there are some common ideas. But we all have that. We all have some X that we think, when I get this, then life gets better, don't we? Mm-hmm. So that, in a nutshell, is the essence of the problem-solving orientation. When we're in the problem-solving structure, everything in life becomes a problem to be solved. And that could be everything from, what kind of work am I going to find, to what am I going to have for breakfast. Everything seems like a problem that we're going to solve. And when we're operating from this problem-solving structure, what you'll find is that it dramatically limits the possibility, the way you experience possibility for yourself and for your life. And that will become a little bit clearer shortly. Now, all of this that I'm saying makes perfect sense to what I call your ego. And I define ego, we're not talking about ego in like the Sigmund Freud way, I'm just simply defining ego as the identity that we all create around 2 years old out of fear and insecurity. So nobody creates an ego out of happiness and love. We create an ego because suddenly we find ourselves in a world that we don't understand. You see, up until that point, like as when we're born, as little babies, we don't have any sense that we're separate. We don't have an experience that we're separate from our mom or from our environment. We just experience life as one open common flow, total oneness. But then around the age of 2 is when we begin to develop what we call self-consciousness. It's like, suddenly it's like you go, oh my God, I must be the Shannon everyone's been talking about. It's like suddenly we begin to realize that there's a me here. This is why I joke that all 2-year-olds are basically narcissists. Not in like some pathological way, but isn't every 2-year-old, they just got here in their world. It's like, of course, it's all about them. But that becomes a little bit of a challenge because this 2-year-old is still so connected to this innocence and love and freedom. And I believe that we look around the world from that tiny little perspective, and I think all of us, compared to the 2-year-old, look very upset, very tense. And so they look around the world and they think, by the way, all of this is happening unconsciously for the 2-year-old. Up until about the age of 4, we live pretty much entirely from our unconscious mind. So they aren't like actively figuring this out, but on some level, they look around the world and they get the feeling like somehow they don't fit in. Like they didn't get the memo about how you're supposed to be in this world. Now that's a problem, because remember, this 2-year-old narcissist doesn't understand how life is supposed to work. So they come to the only conclusion that they can come to. There must be something wrong with me. That's what's going on here. So that's intolerably painful for that little tiny person, because now they don't understand anything about how to be in this world. So we create an ego, an identity. Now what happens is we basically make a decision. Again, this is all unconscious. It's not even really in words so much as it is in like a feeling or an energy that we encode into our nervous systems. But we basically make a decision about ourselves at that point that only comes down to basically a handful of different choices. I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I don't belong, I have to be perfect. Something like that becomes the foundation from which we build this entire identity. This make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then what we do is we promptly forget that we created that and we think this is who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So then what happens is, for the rest of our life, we, you know, on the external, we're just doing our thing. We're living, we're, you know, working, building a family, whatever we're doing. But on the inside, there's a part of us that is constantly trying to prove to the world that we are in fact worthy or good enough or significant. So there's this constant pull. So basically, we create this identity out of fear and insecurity. And the core of that ego becomes some version of I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy, etc. So it's very important to understand this. The primary purpose of your ego is survival, not happiness. So let's talk about an alternative to living exclusively from this ego identity. See, the point, by the way, is not to get rid of the ego or to kill it. It's to, I like to think of it as becoming like transparent, so that the truth of what I call your true self, or sometimes I'll use the term superconscious, can shine through the ego more and more. So let's talk about what I mean. Your superconscious, or your true self, I mean, there's no other way to say it. This is what I would call the spiritual nature of life behind your ego. It's what I think of as the spiritual reality of life. It is already infinite. It is eternal. The very nature of your true self, and this is also very important, is already peace, love, clarity, freedom, happiness, authenticity. There's nothing you have to do or learn. You don't have to read one more self-help book. This is already built in. It's intrinsic to who we are. So the really good news about that is that your true self has access to what I would call infinite wisdom or infinite creativity. And when we learn how to access the superconscious, it actually can recode, as I call it, some of these limiting beliefs that we have encoded into our ego. And this becomes critical when we talk about shifting from a problem-solving relationship to or a problem-solving structure into a creative structure. So, just like the primary goal of the ego is survival, the primary goal of the true self is just experience. It's just having a human experience. Have you ever heard the term, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that's what the true self is. It's your spiritual nature having a human experience. So from that perspective, it doesn't really care if you're happy or sad, rich or poor, healthy or sick. It's just having an experience. But we can use access that resource to recode those parts of us that are caught in the I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, so that we can begin to update those files and begin to live from a different perspective. So, remember I said there was bad news and good news? This is the good news. What I'm saying is we have the opportunity in this moment, without needing to change one more thing about ourselves, to be happy and peaceful and free right now. Essentially what I'm saying is, contrary to what our ego believes, we are not broken. There's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing we need to fix about ourselves. Now, that said, the ego does present obstacles that we need to resolve in some way in order to create lives that we love. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. In summary, here's what I learned in my own journey. Okay? Number one, I learned that this true self that I've been speaking about is a source of peace and clarity within me that is completely independent of my circumstances. Two, I learned that my ego or false self is what prevents me from seeing this true self, or who we really are. 3, I learned that with the support of my true self, I can begin with happiness rather than seeking happiness in some perfect circumstance out there in the world. And 4, I learned that happiness, peace, and clarity turns out is the perfect foundation for creating the life that I want. So rather than waiting until I create the life I want and then I can be happy, if I start with happiness and peace and clarity, it turns out that's a much better place to start. It actually gives me access to much more resources to create the life that I want. So what happens is these days I wake up happy most of the time. You know, I've even managed to create a business where I help business owners and executives and even a very famous NFL superstar who shall remain nameless to find peace and clarity in their own lives while still creating kick-ass results in the world. So let's talk a little bit now about problem solving versus creation. So the problem solving structure comes, as you can probably guess, from the ego. Okay? Because the ego was created to solve a problem, wasn't it? It was created to solve this problem that there's something wrong with me. So we go out in the world and we try and get what we want. But many of us run into difficulty because the life you want to create is not consistent with these internal beliefs. So we create what's called oscillation. We go out, we work, we create some level of whatever we want, and then some part of us says, you're not worthy of having that. You see, it's very important. Remember, the ego's job is survival. What that means is, it's not interested in happiness. It's interested in getting through the next moment or the next day. So anything that causes significant change in your life is considered a risk to your ego. It says, we've been surviving this long without it. Why change things now? So this is very deep programming. It's not easy to just go, oh, okay, well, I'll just stop doing that. But we're going to talk about how to change that in a moment. Okay, let's see. Yeah, oscillation. By the way, if this seems complex or abstract, we're going to do some work together in a few minutes that'll help you experience directly what I'm talking about. I'm really a much bigger believer in direct experience than concepts. We have to give a little bit of education and context in order for you to get to that point, but ultimately this is going to be about how we can actually create some change and some movement here today. Now, on the other hand, we have what I call the creative structure. In the creative structure, we learn to operate in our lives from infinite possibility, the infinite possibility and freedom of the true self, rather than the limitation and the fear of your ego. So what I'd like to do today is sort of open the possibility of everyone here creating a working relationship with this infinite source of peace and clarity. Does that sound like a good plan? You guys okay with that? Okay. So, let's do a demonstration right now. So, this is a demonstration. It's going to take maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And it's going to seem a little weird. I'm going to ask you to just go with me. And at the end, if you think it's weird still, you never have to do it again. But let's just try it for a few minutes, okay? What I'd like you to do is pick an object somewhere in this room that you can put your attention on for a couple of minutes. You don't have to look at me, you don't have to listen to me while I'm talking. In fact, it's better if you don't. So just pick an object and put your attention on it. Now the first thing I'm going to point out a couple of ridiculously obvious things about it. First thing I want you to notice about this object is that it appears separate from you, doesn't it? Like I'm here and the object is over there. Good. So notice that. Second thing I want you to notice about the object is that it exists within space. So notice that. Most of the time when we notice objects, we notice the object itself. We don't pay much attention to the space around it. So right now I want you to notice the space around the object. Maybe just start with a couple of inches. And let that space begin to expand. A couple of feet. A couple more feet. Very obvious, isn't it, that this object exists within the space of this entire room, doesn't it? Just be aware of the space in the room in which that object exists. And we can keep expanding that. We can expand to the entire building or this entire office park. So let your mind be both aware of this object that you're focusing on and the entire space of the office park in which it exists. And we can keep going, can't we? So we can keep expanding out and out and out until the mind can do something very remarkable. Somehow your mind can be aware of the space of the entire universe in which this object exists. So let yourself do that for a moment. Just be aware of the entire universe of space in which this one little object exists. Just keep breathing. And now, let the object drop from your attention and just be aware of the space. And one last shift. Be aware, this is a little abstract, be aware of your awareness of the space. And you may notice as you continue to do this that your mind gets a little quieter, that it becomes a little peaceful. Even in the room itself, it becomes a little more peaceful, a little more still. Just take a moment longer and sort of lean into that space even more. Like lean into the peacefulness and the quiet. Even become that space if you can. And notice that there are certain qualities that is sort of intrinsic to that space. Peacefulness, stillness, expansiveness. I like to use the word love, but not love in the way you see in like a romantic movie or something. Love in the sense that it includes everything within it without judgment. So just notice that. This is really important because as we begin to move from a problem solving to a creative structure, we need to be able to come from a place inside of us that isn't based in not good enough or not worthy or something like that. And from this space, you notice that doesn't really exist. Like from this space of peace and freedom, there is no I'm not good enough. The ego may try and sneak back in. In fact, it will. But the more we practice, this is literally, you guys, as you sit and do this for just a couple of minutes, you are literally rewiring your brain. Rewiring your brain into a configuration that allows you to get back to this place more and more easily. Because the brain doesn't care what we teach it. The brain just says, okay, if we're going to do that, let's create the wiring so we can do more of it. So, understanding this, and hopefully experiencing this a little bit, I want to talk about what we will call a true choice. Because in order to truly enter into the creative structure, we have to learn to step into the experience of what we want now. We're not waiting for some future circumstance to be right and then we can have what we want, where it's not a hope or a wish. We are claiming what we want now. We're stepping into that reality as though it exists now, in this moment. This is very important that you see this. Because when we begin to live in this perspective, that our happiness is not tied to some future outcome, it creates a freedom and an ease that is actually correlated with much greater success. Only now you get to create that success with infinitely less stress. So, let's talk about what that means, okay? Actually, we talked about what it means. Let's just make a true choice. So what I'm going to invite you to do is think about something right now that you want. Could be the perfect job, it could be anything, really. Think about something that you want, and let yourself imagine what you want in the most perfect possible way. Forget about any circumstances or life situations that you think may, I'd love to have this, but, it would be really great if I could get this job, but I'm too this, I'm not enough of that, whatever. Let all that stuff go. And just let yourself imagine having the perfect job right now, or the perfect whatever. And what I want you to do is really step into that. Let yourself feel it. Give yourself permission, even if you're just imagining it. Let yourself experience having exactly what you want right now. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be actually here. You're doing it in your imagination. So take a moment. I'll know you guys are getting closer when I see more smiles on people's faces. This is not a drill. This is something I want you to actually do. So let yourself go there. It's okay. It may feel like completely unrealistic to your ego, but I want you to go there anyway. Okay? You guys have it a little bit? Some sense of what you really, really want? Okay, good. Notice how good that feels. Now, let that vision go for a moment and come back to how things are right now. Yeah, it's different, right? It's different, obviously. It's different. But that's always going to be different. Anytime you have a vision for what you want and you come back to your current reality, you're going to notice there's a gap. There is a gap between what we will call your desired reality and your current reality. And that gap is really important. Think of that gap like as though there were a rubber band between these two. It creates what we call structural tension. This is, again, really important because that structural tension, if we allow it to be present, will literally pull us towards the reality that we want, you see? But we don't like tension. Our ego doesn't like the tension because our ego is very threatened by some possible outcome that isn't consistent with our beliefs about ourselves. So we create distraction or self-sabotage, and somehow this is the oscillation that I was speaking about. We create this idea of what we want, we start to move towards it, and then we go, oh, look, something's over there, a squirrel. Something happened that distracted me from going for what I want. So what we want to do is learn to sit in that tension, create that vision of what we want, and then let yourself sit with the tension. So, we're going to do a little bit of deeper work right now. Because coming back now to your current reality, to your current situation, I want you to ask yourself some questions. What would I have to think or believe about myself, about other people, or the world that would cause resistance to me achieving this goal that I want? What would I have to believe about myself that would stop me from going full out for this goal? And it's always going to be something. And ultimately, it's going to come back to some version of, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not significant. Something like that. So just notice. I know it's a little unpleasant, and we're going to do some work with this in a moment. But for now, just notice that gap. And if you could give that resistance a number on a scale of 1 to 10, what number would you give it? So a lot of people, when I do this work with people in groups or one-on-one, a lot of people will be like, oh man, it's like a 9. So think of it this way, like if your resistance is a 10, it's like you want to go over there, but you're chained to the wall. You can't even move towards what you want. If your resistance is like a 1 or a 2, it's pretty easy. You know, it's kind of like you're on a water slide or something, just heading towards it. So notice, where is your resistance right now? And resistance is different from wanting. Like you might say, well, I really want this, because that's the conscious mind. But the ego, which resides largely in the unconscious mind, is saying, we don't want that at all, to whatever extent it's saying it. So notice to what level of resistance just, naturally comes up in you when you think about this, when you look at it from this perspective. You guys make sense? You guys have some sense of the resistance? Okay? I know that's unpleasant, and I apologize for that, but it's really useful to begin to see it. So you can know what's going on right now, what's really standing between me and having what I want. Because ultimately, what I like to say is that success in life, whatever that looks like to us, is not personal. We don't have to fix ourselves, in other words, in order to be successful. You can probably look out in the world and see a lot of people that are very successful, that have all kinds of great stuff, all kinds of success, that clearly didn't take much time to fix themselves. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be perfect or even love yourself in here in order to create success in the world. And I'm sure you guys all have examples in, entertainment or politics or something, right? So we don't have to fix ourselves. Success is not personal. It's structural. What that means is that we create the proper structure in order to achieve success. And what I'm suggesting to you today is that a creative structure is infinitely more likely for you to not only create what you want, but to create it sustainably, so that you don't keep going back and forth. So, in order to do that, as I suggested earlier, we have to find a way to do what I call recode some of those beliefs from your past. Some of these beliefs that are sort of built into your ego. Because that's the part, as we've already established, that kind of keeps pulling us back into the old realities. Okay? So, do I have permission to get even a little bit weirder than it's been so far?
You're amongst friends.
Okay, good. So I'd like to do something, and I think we'll do it with the whole group at once, which I call a recode, or superconscious recode, call it. And essentially what that means is, we're going to hook up directly with your superconscious, your true self. And we're going to invite it. Remember, it has access to infinite creativity, infinite wisdom. We're going to invite that part of you to recode some of these negative beliefs that are preventing you from going fully for what you want. Is that okay? Now, this is not hypnosis. You're not going to go into a trance. Nobody's going to cluck like a chicken. This is, somebody's disappointed. It's simply, essentially, me speaking. So I'm going to be speaking to your superconscious. Okay? You don't have to answer. I could just as easily do it quietly in my own head, but I'm going to speak a little bit of it out loud so that you guys have a sense of what the process is like. So, in order to do this, I want you guys to all go back to your true choice, whatever it is that you absolutely want, and just get clear about that. Then, just like we did before, go back, notice how good that feels, go back into the current reality, notice the resistance, and I want you to come back, if you remember what it was, to that number. What is my resistance now, on a scale of 1 to 10? Just to keep something in mind, if it's greater than about 5, it becomes really difficult to get what we want. So probably, depending on what you guys are asking for, if you're asking for a burrito, you might not have a lot of resistance. Okay? But if you're really asking for something that's really important to you that you don't have yet, my guess is the resistance is 7 or higher. So let yourself experience that. Don't try and positive think this into, oh, it's only a 2. It's probably not. So just get present with that. And when you're ready, I recommend closing your eyes just because it's a little easier for you to kind of go inside. So when you're ready, I recommend you close your eyes and you give me permission in your mind to connect with your superconscious. Basically, just to give you some idea what I mean by that, The idea behind this is that at the most fundamental level, we all share, I would say, a common being. I like the expression, God looking out through 8 billion pairs of eyes. So at that most fundamental level, we are one. This is what we knew as a baby before we got this idea that we were separate. So when I talk about connecting with the superconscious, all I'm doing is I'm accessing that part of us where we're already all connected, okay? So, this is the weird part now. So go ahead and close your eyes and just relax. And give me permission in your mind, if you choose to connect with your superconscious. Okay? And I'm just going to take a minute so let the room settle into that. Good. Excellent. Okay. Good. Superconscious, are you there? Good. I want to pull another thing from my own room. Excuse me. Superconscious, as we begin this process, please find the resistance in each of us to whatever it is that we want. Please connect with that resistance and please recode whatever beliefs, stories, ideas we may have picked up along the way of our lives that are now preventing us from stepping fully into the life that we love right now. Please do that now. Create a massive belief and history change. Everything that's needed in the perfect order and the perfect sequence. Good. Just keep breathing. Don't have any expectations. No, you don't have to feel anything. Some people will, some people won't. Just let the process unfold. Superconscious, please look at any sub-personalities, sub-identities, the protector controller, the inner child, the inner parent, the inner teacher, any aspect of us that might not be fully on board with this change, please bring it into the active experience now. Please inform this part that it will not be killed or destroyed, that we're just inviting it to join the team, that everything works better when we're playing as a team. Please inform that part of all the reasons why it works better to join the team and why it works better to all of us work together towards what we want. That even our survival is more ensured when all of us are working together. Please do that now. Create a massive change to create everything. Thank you. Superconscious, please check in with past emotions, any emotions that may have been created in past experiences from family, from school, from any experience that may have reinforced these negative beliefs in our ego. And please allow those beliefs to recode, update, align with our current reality and our current desires. Please do that now in the perfect order and perfect sequence. Thank you. Good. Let that one settle in for a moment. That one's making some change. Let that one settle in. Superconscious, please look at family history. Any beliefs that may have been passed down from our current family or through generations, through endless timelines that may have affected the way we experience ourselves in the world today, the way we experience possibility or freedom. Please tag and treat all of those beliefs now in the perfect order and perfect sequence. Any secondary intentions that may exist within us that may be pulling us off the path to what we want and desire. Superconscious, please treat body systems, particularly the heart, the lungs. Whew. In Chinese medicine, the lungs are associated with the emotion of grief. Please allow any emotions to come into the active experience associated with different body parts and organs. Please treat all of those emotions, all those energetic imbalances in the perfect way, in perfect sequence. Very good. Just keep breathing, just keep allowing whatever needs to happen to happen. Very nice. Just super conscious, please treat any other beliefs or ideas or anything that may still be left that may be holding us back from achieving the life that we desire. Please treat everything now that may be causing any level of resistance from 0 to 10. Really good, you guys. Please ground all of these changes throughout the matrix of the universe in all parts of mind and being. And you guys did really well. When you're ready, you can come back and check in with that resistance. Anyone notice that the resistance may be a little less than it was before? Yeah, I see some heads nodding. Anybody want to share a number, like from what to what?
Go James.
What's that?
I said go James.
You know what, I'll let someone else answer.
3.
It's 3 now?
It was at 6 at first.
So it was at 6 and now it's at 3.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? I mean, like we can actively feel that something changed. I told you this was a little weird, but I think it's actually, believe it or not, we don't have time to get into it now, but it's actually based in real science. This is not just some woo-woo game that we're playing here. This is, we can get into the science and how this all works, and quantum physics and all kinds of cool stuff. Anyone else?
I had a weird thing. I wasn't sure what I wanted.
Okay.
And I thought I had something that I wanted. And then I thought about the resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that it wasn't really the thing that I wanted.
Nice. Really good.
And when I started thinking about what I really wanted, it became a path of lesser resistance.
Oh, good. Yeah, see, all kinds of cool stuff can come out of this. You know, word of advice, still keep checking in with the ego, because there may not be a lot of resistance, but sometimes the ego likes to sneak in when we're not paying attention.
I think that the shift is when I quit thinking about myself so much and thought about others.
Yeah, good.
That changed
Great.
what I wanted.
That's great. Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. Anybody else questions, thoughts about this process or anything we've spoken about? Okay, great. You can feel the room gets really quiet after this. Can you feel it in the space? You know, that's not, because remember, we're not separate. So when we enter into a space of possibility or peace or freedom together, the whole room rises. So what we're doing is we're not just doing it for ourselves, we're contributing to each other when we do this work. In fact, we're contributing to humanity because it doesn't end at the walls of this room. We're creating ripples right now that go out. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys. Did you? Yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
please.
Fred, how do you, what you just did for us, how do we do that alone?
It's a little tricky, but I mean, listen, in essence, you know, what I did, you can do for yourself. Does it help to have, you know, help or support? Of course it does. That's what I do. But at the end of the day, your superconscious is fully equipped to do this. And if you just let yourself get quiet, you know, what are the steps here? You make a true choice. You step into that choice, like as it were true now. That's why we call it, you're choosing. I choose X. And then you step into it, you feel it, notice how great that feels. Then you come back to your current reality, desired reality, current reality. You notice what that feels like. You notice the level of resistance. You give the resistance a number. And then It's really as simple as saying superconscious. You guys get it? I mean, can you really imagine that there is a part of you that is infinite and creative and powerful beyond measure, and that it's available to you at every moment? And so if you could just simply, petition this part of you for help. Could you help me? This is very different, by the way. This is not self-help. Self-help, and you're speaking to someone who has read probably 1,000 self-help books. This is not, the problem with self-help, which I came to realize, is it's almost entirely based in fixing. In other words, it's based in the problem-solving structure. Most self-help says, keep improving yourself. Well, what does that mean? If there's something you have to improve about yourself, it suggests that there's something wrong with you now. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't learn new skills and do all kinds of great stuff, but we can do that from the perspective of peace and happiness. Not when I improve myself or when I do this, then I'll be okay. You see, the ego is this constant game of trying to prove its worthiness. So I read 1,000 self-help books to try and figure out if I could ever be worthy. You see? We all do it in some version of that. So the answer, simply to your question, James, is just try it. See what happens. Don't try it once. Try it a lot. Give yourself like a little bit of space to try and stumble, and that didn't seem to make any difference. And I suspect if what I'm calling the superconscious is as available to you right now as anyone else in this room.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
To me, it's like almost giving yourself self-love.
It's very much like that. Well, I'll take it one step further, because I totally get what you're saying. What you begin to realize is that you are love. That there is no difference between you and this space of love that we're talking about. This is what I mean by true self. So the more you can bathe yourself in that and experience yourself as that, the greater the freedom that you create, and the less these obstacles that we've been talking about will have so much influence on us. Great questions, thank you. Yes?
Where does the whole, fake it until you make it kind of thing come in with this? The belief system of, I'm not there yet, but I'm going to pretend that this is
So
where
this
I
is
am.
the challenge with that, okay? Check in for yourself. If anyone went, yeah, that makes sense. Check in for yourself the extent to which that may be coming from a problem-solving structure. You see what I mean? That's where it gets really tricky, is it's not just what are we doing, but what is where am I coming from when I try and do that? So if we're coming, and by the way, the problem-solving structure is very sneaky. It's in there all the time. So it's going to sneak in, just like it probably did there. So rather than fake it till you make it, I would say be it until you see it.
Oh, I like that. Nice.
Okay? In other words,
Millions.
what's that?
Well, I was just solving a problem, sorry, but bumper sticker, millions
Bumper
of
sticker,
dollars.
okay, good, that's what I
Be it
told
until you see it.
For ideas, looking for business partners. Just one sec. So the idea is we can step into the reality now of who we want to be and what we want, and step into it. Become the person that already has the life you want. And I'm suggesting that when you be it, you can step into you create infinite more possibility of creating that life. Okay? Is that better?
Yeah, no, I love
Okay.
that.
Awesome. Yes, ma'am.
I really appreciate this, and I apologize for being late. The way you're presenting it helps folks and helps me. I'm a woman of faith, and yet I have to speak to a lot of people who don't share my faith. And what I'm finding is when I talk from, and I was just given this at another job lead group the other day, I always start with, what are you grateful for? And then what are you willing to have revealed to you now?
Yeah. Nice.
And because it's all about revelation, because we are that now.
Yes.
So I very much appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, and this is completely, even though I'm offering this in sort of a non-denominational
Yes.
way, this is, I've delivered this, to many, many people of all different persuasions. I joke all the time that I'm a Jewish kid from Long Island who loves to quote Jesus.
Yay.
Not from a religious perspective, but because Jesus said many things that are very consistent with what we're sharing here now, you know? And there really is that possibility of, you know, if like when I say ask superconscious, if you want to say ask God for guidance, that's fine. And the trick, by the way, as I'm thinking about this, whatever you call it doesn't matter, but what we do is we have to create what I call a state of innocence, which means we have to just kind of for a moment let go of our expectations, let go of what we think, how we think it's supposed to go, and just go, you know, okay, superconscious, this is what I'm dealing with. Can you help me recode this, or God, or however you see it? Okay? Any other questions?
This seems very deliberative. Where does it come in where like you have, you know, a car has landed on a loved one and you're able to lift the car, you know,
okay.
because, you know, so that's, to me, that's intentional in a subconscious way.
Yeah, and I mean, there's the other features there, like adrenaline and stuff
Of
like
course,
that.
yes.
Is there some continuum, like between what I'm talking about here and lifting a car? Yeah, I'm sure there is. I don't have the answer to that. But I do 100% believe that we can live more and more as our true self, as our superconscious. And as we do, we get access to resources that are just not available in the ego. You know, the ego, the resource that the ego draws on is what I call your educated mind. The pile of facts and information that you've learned throughout your life. A lot of that is what we call conditioning, which means it's not something that we've ever really looked at or questioned. You know, does anyone have ideas about life that maybe you haven't really questioned? That maybe aren't necessarily supportive of the life that you want to create? That's all the stuff of the educated mind. And in the superconscious, you literally begin to operate from the space of the field of possibility. And this is where I say quantum physics and all this kind of stuff is, you know, it really does apply here. In quantum physics, they talk about probability. So you have a wave. Everything in life exists as a wave. And then, I mean, literally, this gets weird, but, you know, I mean, there are people who did the math behind this that said that they observed that you could, a particle, you know, like in a particle accelerator, you could only observe its speed or its location. Because as soon as you observed it, just your attention on it, it would change. We're literally saying that your attention affects and possibly creates your reality.
Schrodinger's reality.
Schrodinger and all these people, right? Schrodinger's cat. That's right. And there's a million examples in quantum physics, and there are really cool books like the Tao of Physics where somebody discovered that a lot of the stuff that they're discovering in quantum physics, people like sages have been saying for thousands of years in other traditions. So these are not new ideas. We're kind of updating it for this world, but these are not new ideas. And these are ideas that again, the ego resists them because the ego goes, this is baloney, you know? I just need to do this or that, or maybe, you know, maybe I just need to go back to bed. But the more we begin to just give ourselves permission to open into the space like we're talking about here, it creates something really magical. That's been my experience, you know, and I share this with the hopes that someone will maybe find it to be that way as well. So let me see, did I forget anything that I want to share before we wrap this up?
Can we somehow tie it into, obviously it's going to be individual for each person, but the job search and the things that go along with that, the feelings that go along with that?
Sure, well, can we? Are you asking me to do that? Or?
Yeah, I'm just kind of, I mean,
Well, how would you do it?
Yikes, I'm not looking for work.
Doesn't matter.
But if I were, I mean, I would be in a position of, we always like to call it the deer in the headlights moment. You know, that like, where do I start? What do I do? Do I need to, you know, do my resume, LinkedIn profile?
Okay, so let's put all that away.
Yeah.
Because obviously all that stuff is important.
Right.
But it's very easy to go into problem solving
Exactly.
around that. Did you have something you wanted to
Well, you know, the request to tie these two together has something to do with what I was kind of going on in my mind, you know, to just divulge for 30 seconds, if I may.
Please.
I I thought, well, what did I really want? And my knee-jerk reaction was wealth without work.
Yeah, right.
Right? But then what I realized is I want to solve problems and be paid for it, but I don't want to work for somebody else. And then that was a lot of me going on in there. And then I thought, oh, actually, I want to solve people's problems, but I don't want to do it alone. And I don't want to work for somebody else.
You see, it begins to unfold, even just being in the process.
Right.
And there still will be, the more you get clear about what that looks like, right? Because we're in this process of really getting a clear vision, which is coming back to what Shannon was asking, then you may notice resistance to that. So the more specific we get, the more we go. Then the ego has something specific to resist.
But and to conclude it all, this all has what I was looking for is what's my path on the next career step for the next 10, 20 years.
Right.
Yeah. So back to what Shannon, we would start by saying, what is it? Like if we're talking about the job search, what would be the perfect answer to that question? What do I want? Not what do I think I can have? What does the society say I can have? Just step into the reality of what you want. And the process is the same. Step into that reality, feel it, experience it, see how good that feels, come back to how you are now, notice the resistance, give it a number, and then we would do the whole superconscious recovery kind of thing. Yes?
The takeaway for me too was stepping away from the ego, because you've got all these facts and experience and skills built up from your previous work.
Right.
I've had people tell me it's like employment PTSD almost. And if you can step away from some of those preconceptions, and there's so much there that even if you question everything all the time, it can sneak back in as, the boss is going to lay me off, or, I'm first in, first out, or, I'm not as valuable as other people, or things like that.
It's sneaky.
Yeah.
And it knows just what buttons to push in you.
Yeah.
That can
And
get
this
you.
process lets you step out of that, push it aside, and kind of have a new take.
Yeah, that's great.
So-
So this wasn't too weird, too crazy. Good, I'm glad I never know. Yes, ma'am.
After I retired, I took a year and a half off, and then I decided to get into the job market and stuff. I hadn't interviewed in over 30 years, 29 years. So kind of afraid of a little bit, took some jobs here and there, and but in those jobs, I was able to learn new software, just things like that. And so I had to do this. I had to say, you can do this. And, you can talk, you speak very well, what are they going to get from you? So when I went to that interview, yes, I was in HR back about the first 5 years of my career, and then I went auditing for 20. So then, now it's back to HR. The job was across the road, 5 minutes from my house. I said, I gotta get this, right? So I went in there. Look, I haven't done this in 20 years, but I tell you what I can do. Blah, 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 blah. And they saw that, I guess a form of happiness, a form of not being scared, that I could tackle the job. Once trained, I could tackle the job. So even a while back, later after I was hired, I was told by a youngin that you must have studied for this interview. I said, I sure the hell did, and I got the job. So you may not be fully qualified, or you feel like you're not fully qualified for the job, but
It's that ego thing saying you're not good enough.
Right. And I felt that I didn't have nothing to lose. I just gotta tell them my true self. This is who I am.
You see, we're all operating somewhere on the spectrum between problem solving and creation. It's not digital, like one or the other. So, I'm sorry, what your name
Stella.
is? Stella. You had some experience of being able to at least step a little bit towards creation. And you see, it creates a whole different experience when you walk in there for the interview. So, yeah, there's a lot more going on here than just like positive thinking or self-talk, but there's definitely, that's on the spectrum. Like, the more we realize, and this is, it's work, guys, I'm not pretending like this is a one-time thing, but the more we can realize that there's nothing to fix about ourselves, that we are not broken. And we all have that going on to some extent. The more we can step out of that brokenness and just step into this infinite possibility, it just changes everything. That's really what it does. So I'm actually going to need to wrap this up. I'm over time, but I'm also running. I'm going to have to get to the next thing. So I appreciate this very much. You have contact information there for me on those sheets. Hopefully everyone got one of those sheets. And hopefully I covered the questions very well. If you have questions or something, further from what we talked about today, feel free to reach out to me. There's on the very top there's my LinkedIn profile identity, and that's probably the easiest place to connect with me. You can send me a message there, and yeah, I'll be happy to connect with you there. Yes, sir.
Do you have a book?
Do I have a book? No. That'd be great, wouldn't it? I'd love to write a book about all this stuff. Yeah.
Eventually.
I have actually the chapters outlined. The book is called The Self-Realized Life. Look for it in bookstores. And not just yet.